What's up, guys? It's Johnny Candido of Candido Training HQ. Today I'm going to talk about a lifter who, in my opinion, was the most informed for his time. His takes aged the best, and he had a decent influence, granted, was way underrated. And this lifter never even cracked 3,000 followers on Facebook or 3,000 even on Instagram, yet a couple decades ago was a phenomenal natural bodybuilder who, in my opinion, had takes in programs that to this day have proven to be the best option, both available at that time and one of the better options even now. Now, a lot of people know about Mike Mentzer, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'll even throw Mark Ripito in the mix for this video as far as advice on just how to lift. What should we do in the gym? But the person who I am saying is far better than all of them in terms of how sound his takes are is Jeff Willet. Now, OGs of the channel will already know why I'm saying this, because he came up with the Max OT method. And a lot of people know that earlier in my channel, I actually looked more jacked than later in the channel. And part of the reason for that was the foundation of Max OT. And then I also did add my own stuff that really optimized things to just give a little bit of a bolster in volume. But it gave me a fantastic base, and then I stopped doing curls and then bulked. So that'll do that. But we're getting back there. But this is something where I don't think anybody on YouTube has given him his flowers that he deserves, and is really compared across time to the legacies of other people like Mike Mentzer, because a lot of people say that, oh, Mike's opinions have aged really well. They haven't. Not really at all. There have been a few upsides, which we'll talk about, but every single positive point Mike Mentzer has, Jeff Willet has, and even more. So on a point where we can all agree that Mike Mentzer was phenomenal on is on high intensity. He emphasized pushing each set really hard, and that's something that became a lost art, I would say 8 years ago, in the quote-unquote science-based training at the time. I would say even Brad Schoenfeld, my friend Omar Isaf, people like that, I would say to some extent contributed to favoring volume over intensity.
I have to say, mistakes. What are when you look, because you also did programming, right, for individuals for a long period of time, when you took a look at, let's say, their own programming or what they're doing, what were some of the biggest mistakes, or what were the limiting factors that prevented them from maximizing their muscle building potential?
Yeah, I'd say probably the biggest mistake I see is too much training to failure for too often. The people just try to push balls to the wall without taking any.
But Rocky did it, Dr. Broenfeld.
Yeah, Rocky did it, and Rocky probably was overtrained as well.
That just sounds gay.
Here, what I am going to recommend is a good general recommendation of 15 to 25 working sets per muscle group per week. So this does include your warm-ups.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
And it just turns out that you have to bring it. And that is becoming more and more obvious in today's era, with Paul Carter, Chris Beardsley kind of leading the charge on that. But again, Jeff Willet was always on top of this. He emphasizes just as much as Mike Mentzer, emphasized going heavy, progressive overload, and pushing hard. But again, a big point where I'll give Mike Mentzer credit on is rep ranges being somewhat arbitrary. He even said that if you could hit 6 to 10 reps, to just go to failure or near it, wherever that ends up. And if it's 13 reps, so be it. If it's 4 reps, so be it. Don't re-rack it. And that, I think, everyone agrees even more now than before, when people did kind of cling on to reps. This is a point where Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, his volume recommendations were just too high. And I'll show example programs to show you exactly what's too high and too low of volume. But he had a program set up where, as far as what was popular, you just can't actually bring high intensity, even though I think he did for the most part, but especially as a natural lifter, you just cannot hammer 20 sets of a certain muscle group in one workout, and then that 20th set be high quality.
You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.
And that is, again, to Mike Mentzer's credit and to a lot of other people who emphasize higher intensity, slightly lower volume, that is by far preferable if we're going to really compromise. And like when David Lade lifted with Chris Bumstead, really undershot so that he could hit a bunch of volume. But who cares?
Just like half of it.
My muscle.
Why are you so small? Too late?
That's about right.
Why'd you stop?
Because we have like all these other sets. I have to save my fuel.
That's not how working out works.
What?
You don't save your fuel.
But then you're just gonna be exhausted.
How are you gonna make any progress if you're not taking anything close to failure?
And I actually give TNF a lot of credit. It actually feels weird saying a modern lifter's name on my channel. I feel like such an unk going like, TNF? You know, now I'll link in the description, TNF. But anyways, his TNF actually had a great breakdown of a Ronnie Coleman workout where he showed how Ronnie Coleman in actuality did not do nearly as much volume as advertised because he actually would just hit a top set. So even though it would be written on paper as maybe 4 sets of 8 on barbell bench or 3 sets of 6 on squats, he actually was really just hitting one hard set. And then those other sets were quote unquote volume, but they were really warm-ups or cool downs that weren't actually stimulating. And I do think a lot of people have a misunderstanding from that, from the top lifters themselves not communicating that. Okay, now the second issue is volume. Now this is where things get real. Is Mike Mentzer's volume recommendations were ridiculous. We can all admit that. They did not age well whatsoever. I don't believe the hype when people say that. Because in certain cases, he would recommend as few as 3 sets for an entire full body workout.
I cut his workouts back even further in terms of volume, from 5 sets to only 3. And the frequency from every 3rd day to every 5th day, and guess what happened, Bill? He started making progress.
3 sets.
Right.
Is that 3 sets per body part or 3 sets?
3 sets total for everything.
What would be an example of that, to break it down a little more specifically?
He would do a set of squats for his lower body, a set of pull downs, close grip underhand pull downs for his back and biceps, and a set of heavy incline presses or dips for his chest, shoulders, and triceps.
And that was his workout.
But it's even worse than that. It's not just that he would have low volume and that was surprising or anything like that. It's that even his reasoning was overly dogmatic, and he would say that if someone's struggling to progress, then clearly they have to do even less. And then when you look at his actual training split, he would separate things by 4 days apart. So let's look at an actual program here. So you see, you're only doing a few sets of chest with 4 days in between each one of these workouts. So this is a 16-day split, and you're only doing a few sets of chest. And again, for more advanced lifters or people who ran into a plateau, what he would recommend is do one workout every 5 days if needed, even as far as one workout every 6 or 7 days. And that's absurdly low volume. Grown man, by the way. And that's just absurd. I mean, that leads to such undertraining that I think just the underpinning assumptions he had were incorrect. And even would say, like, even his reasoning was in a way where he's like, okay, I know this is optimal training and these assumptions are correct. So if I'm not getting optimal results for everyone, then something must be adjustable that will propel those results kind of using the same frame. But in practice, especially anyone who's coached a lot of people, either in powerlifting or bodybuilding, you see that there's no one way to slice it.
Some might be prompted to ask the question at this point, well, Mentzer, what motivated you to continue thinking in this direction? It was something I learned from philosophy, that when in possession of a truly valid theory, and beyond that, and just as important, you're making the proper practical application of the theoretical principles, progress will be little short of spectacular all the time. No matter what the field of endeavor, whether you're sending a man to the moon, performing surgery, or developing muscle mass beyond normal levels. I had to admit that my clients' progress wasn't always thus. It wasn't until I reduced their training frequency to once every 4 to 7 days, back in February of 1995, that voila, they finally started achieving results of the order I always knew were possible. Where prior to that, I would only occasionally have a client gain 10 to 20 pounds in a month, or 30 to 40 pounds in 3 to 5 months, since February of 1995, such results have been the rule.
Some people can prioritize intensity. Some people need to squat 3 times a week. Some people can squat 1 time a week and be absolutely fine. But there's no one fixed assumption and then balance everything else around that. Some people can have rising RP, some people static RP. Like, you can really rebuild this thing in any direction. And a lot of times you have to for those harder clients. But to just suggest, just space the workouts more and more and more and more until you finally get a result. I mean, if you're doing one workout every 6 days and it's a full body workout where you're just doing a couple sets, And also one big thing is he often didn't even recommend to hit isolations.
When I see certain individuals not making satisfactory progress, I eliminate as much overlap as I can. I'll take the shoulders and arms out of the program entirely. The chest work indirectly and even directly stimulates the shoulders and triceps.
Right.
And the back work does the same thing with the biceps. I have had clients that have made better progress with their shoulders and arms after eliminating specific exercises for those areas. Remember, overtraining is often the result of overlapping. When I say it's easy to overtrain, I ain't joking.
Ironically, kind of similar to Mark Ripito, then, I mean, there's just no way to rationalize that that's close to optimal. Could you get away with it? I mean, sure, if you want to do that, if you're a busy person, but it's nowhere near ideal. And another point I'll say that I don't think aged as well, that doesn't get enough attention, is rep ranges. I think both he did have a little bit too high of reps when it comes to pushing to failure, and also a little bit too arbitrary. So what I found kind of weird is in this sample workout that we're talking about, and this is probably the best example of something he lays out. You know, you do 1 to 3 reps after doing a higher rep set, and then you do that with a superset on chest, and then you go back to doing higher reps. So it just kind of didn't really make sense, and I do think 1 to 3 reps just is too low, especially as a second movement. I would say you'd want to do that first if you're going to do that, and there's really no reason to do a superset at all. Because the only context where I recommend a superset is if you're doing antagonist muscle groups, because that you can save a lot of time if you do a chest and back workout and you're just doing them, right away. And then you're able to basically double your workload and not have as much overlap. Obviously, the nervous system will have some fatigue that's global, but for the most part, you're able to then actually get a real advantage. Whereas if you're doing a superset of just right away hitting an incline bench and then hitting a pec fly, there's just really no reason to just cut that rest time to 0. Now, the reason why it was so popular, though, is because on the other end of the spectrum, Arnold Schwarzenegger did have some retarded training. Okay, I said it. Because the volume here is beyond ridiculous in the opposite direction. I mean, this is something where it is just untenable to do that many chest sets in one workout, and then let alone that's 3 times a week. If you're blasting any muscle group with 15 plus sets in one workout and then doing that 3 times a week, and you had other programs that were even more, that were 6 times a week with 2-a-days, it just makes no sense. So if you're ever doing 50 sets or more on a muscle group, I know that there's one study that people kind of rationalized that could have been useful, but then in context, it makes really no sense. And it's just not worth even putting your body through. That is also why Mike Mentzer is so beloved. So I do give credit there that there was just a lot of extremity in either directions. And unfortunately, that is a byproduct of the internet, is that people love extremes. So if super high volume's wrong, then they go, Mike Mentzer's right. And then they go super low volume, even though especially doing, let's say, 1 set of 20 on squat, which some people do advocate for, even some science-based guys who are respected, I've seen advocate for that while critiquing Mike Israetel. But then you just say, okay, but then there's no reason to do one ultra high set either. It's way more effective to do a couple moderate rep range sets to a high intensity on each set. And it's, if anything, as recoverable or more than one ultra high rep super hard set. So this leads me to Jeff Willet's program. So again, this was a couple decades ago, and we're looking back at how well this has aged. This is a phenomenal program. I mean, you could just run this right now. You could take a screenshot and run it. I almost want to run it. But, I'm not right now because I have a better program for a specific purpose. In fact, I would actually argue that's the only reason you should pay for coaching. If you're not in any particular situation where you have a certain agenda, I think you should just run this if you're interested in building muscle, and you're good to go, unless you have a specific goal where you're like, okay, I want to optimize for biasing biceps or lateral delts, which is what I'm doing right now. Or, for example, my Forever program, I have a bodybuilding upper body and then powerlifting lower body merged program, which is something that's unique that really isn't publicly available. Or if you want to train 3 days a week or something like that because you're busy. I think all those reasons are where you should get coaching. But otherwise, you could just run this Jeff Willet program right here. I mean, that is a phenomenal layout. At most, on some spots, you're doing 7 sets, but for the most part, you're doing, let's say, 4 to 6 sets on a muscle group, training it 1 time a week directly, a little bit more indirectly. And this is a great setup with enough exercise variety also to hit everything that you need. But what's unique here is that 4 to 6 rep range. I do think that's what's aged the best. And what was the most unique about Jeff Willet is doing low mid reps on even bicep curls. And I remember at the time, really nobody was doing that. Everyone was saying, okay, for strength, you want to go low reps on barbell bench press, and then you want to do a bunch of high reps when it comes to bicep curls. By flipping the script on that and hitting those lower reps, I think both it was supported by data now, where there's a lot of good evidence that doing lower reps than people expect actually can be as effective, if not possibly more effective, because you're not getting that same fatigue. You actually have more central nervous system fatigue from higher reps, and you just get straight to the effective reps sooner, while also having better recoverability, because you can recover from a set of 5 reps on curls and then hit 2 more sets with really high quality without having to lower load as much. You can just experientially, just see that by pushing to RP9 and noticing not that big of a decline in performance. Whereas if you are doing obviously 15s, then of course by set 3, you're going to have to lower that weight pretty significantly. And ultimately, even if you hit the same RPE, it doesn't mean it's equally as effective if your central nervous system can't fire as effectively to recruit those muscle fibers. And this is where Jeff Willet really shined, is that I would also say the overall evidence supports his volume level. I mentioned this in a video recently. There really is no research overall supporting the Mike Mentzer style. And that's the thing that I always find baffling. It's just not supported to do, 1 to 2 sets in a workout or in a week. It's never really advantageous to do under 5 sets versus doing 5 to 6 sets. So that's just always wise to just why not? If you force yourself, I never do more than 6 sets on chest day. It's it will make you hungry for the gym again. And that is the key. And for some reason, it is just very rare. The only person I've really seen stick to recommending this is Jeff Willet of Max OT, which I will make a video about in the near-term future of how well his takes have aged. Because he's a combination of a lot of variables that you don't quite see that specific combination a lot, even though a lot of the research does support his training style. And lastly, another subjective point is when you do 3 sets, especially 3 sets of 4 to 6 reps, you are able to get a couple sets that basically you're already primed for, to where by only doing literally 1 hard set, you are also leaving on the table some motor control adaptation that comes within workout. And I think that is a real downside to the HIIT training style of just doing 1 set. But it's also, again, unique to doing 4 to 6 reps because you can get that second set and maybe even the third set just as good of quality. Whereas if you were doing, like I said, 12 to 15s, even then that effect probably wouldn't be as strong. And it's actually funny because when I start out with one of my beginner programs of 3 sets of 4 to 6 reps per set on the squat, and then basically if I could hit 3 sets of 6, I would then add load. If I hit any set with 4 or 5 reps, I would just wait until I could hit 3 sets of 6. A lot of people ask me, well, isn't this just like Mark Ripeto's 3 sets of 5? Are you just trying to avoid doing it and kind of do your own very slight modification just to be different? And the answer is no. Is that wiggle room of 4 to 6 reps, it really does buy you enough space to then push harder and have higher intensity in terms of difficulty per set. And that is incredibly important. Those really small things go a long way, because otherwise people have anxiety on, okay, am I going to hit exactly 5 reps? Am I slightly undershooting? All these, miscalculations become very narrowed if you have to hit exactly 1 rep target. Whereas if you get it 4, 5, or 6, now you're dealing with just enough breathing room, and it reduces anxiety, I find, in most people. And again, it just gets at what mechanistically matters the most, which is pushing hard, yet not allowing those reps to get cartoonishly high. And one of my last points is, man, look at Jeff Willet's neck. It's pretty narrow, isn't it? Doesn't it look possible that he's natural? Is it possible he's just a phenomenal looking natural guy? And even at his older age now, I need to collab with him, but he's in his 50s now, and he just looks fantastic. He just looks like a very healthy man. He looks like a well-rounded Canadian. Now, am I going to say I know he's natural? No. I don't know. And to be honest, I'm more black-pilled now on how many grifters there are in the world, how many liars there are in the world. So I will never say that I know. I have no idea. But what I do think is that he looks like a very well-rounded bodybuilder who has a career that I think is unbelievably underrated in terms of his effect on exercise science and on application. I think that he has one of the best records when it comes to public information, if not the single best, because it is hard, even for myself, to think whether my takes will age well in 10 to 20 years. His already did. And one last point I'll say to Mike Mentzer being overrated, because obviously this isn't to to diminish his name or anything. Rest in peace, Mike Mentzer. Even though he was an atheist, we can always hope for a last-second conversion to escape eternal torment. But in my opinion, the biggest thing with Mike Mentzer is this lone wolf effect that he has. I think the reason why he has such a rabid fan base is because when you do something so abnormal, so beyond the usual, and you're articulate, while also being an excellent bodybuilder himself, which of course he was. But then what happens is everyone compares whoever's criticizing, like myself, my physique to Mike Mentzer's. And don't worry, I'm not going to get Mike Isertel on you. I'm not going to say that I'm bigger and stronger than Mike Mentzer was. But what I do notice is a lot of times anyone who says, well, Mike Mentzer's training isn't good because X, Y, Z, then someone will say, well, Mike Mentzer is bigger than you. But then you have to think, well, what about people who train like him? And that's where that rarity becomes their advantage, because not that many people do train like him, except for his fans. But that's why, and this is no shade at all, but this is a page that posts very favorably of Mike. It's important to see that examples like this exist, where this guy's a big fan of Mike Mentzer. This is going to be your typical lifter who does his type of program. And then when you judge based on the merits of it, don't imagine Mike Mentzer personally versus whoever's critiquing it. Just imagine yourself doing either 3 to 5 sets in a workout or just 1 set every 6 days. But anyways, the point here is Jeff Willet is unbelievably underrated. As long as I'm alive, there's a Jeff Willet fan in the world. That's it, guys. Make sure to like, subscribe, join the Candido Forever program.